Hello, beautiful souls. It's Julie. Thank you so much for listening. Guess what? I'm actually recording this intro for you from the pool. Never done that before, but hey, why not, right? I just wanted to let you know a couple of different things. Some of you have been asking, hey, Julie, when are you and Blake starting that couples podcast? We're actually not going to start it until the beginning of September. It's not going to be with Angels and Awakening. It'll be completely separate podcast. I also wanted to let you know, if you've been feeling the nudge to deepen your connection with your angels, to help others heal, to finally say yes to your soul's calling of becoming a healer yourself, this is it. The Angel Reiki School is now open for online enrollment. And when you sign up today, you can start right away. You get online meetings with me. And plus, this is a huge bonus. When you register for the online Angel Reiki School, your tuition to one of the in-person Angel Reiki School weekends within the next 12 months, that tuition will be completely complimentary if you do the online school and you sign up for it today. Remember, when you join the Angel Reiki School, you are learning mediumship, angel messaging, how to become an angel messenger yourself. You will be certified in that to bring through messages for others. Also, energy healing. Friends, I love you so incredibly much, and this is going to give you a skill that is going to help you build possibly a six-figure business plus yourself, which is what Spirit wants for you, if that's really what's calling to your heart. Friends, I'm also booking private readings again. Spots are limited, and I've added a discounted reading so that if you're willing to let it air on the podcast, you get a discount for that. So if you've ever wanted a session with me, now is the time. Book your private reading or your reading that'll air on this show online at theangelmedium.com, theangelmedium.com. And finally, our Sacred Women's Circles begin August 1st. These are small, intimate groups where you're going to grow spiritually, receive healing, and connect deeply with other soul-led women. You can learn more and register for everything here at theangelmedium.com. That's theangelmedium.com. Friends, thank you so much for your continued support of me and this podcast. Because of you, I get to do what I love every single day. And friends, I am so incredibly grateful. Getting to teach you in the membership, in the circles, in the Angel Reiki School is really so fulfilling. And, just thinking about it brings tears to my eyes because you allow me to do what I love. And truly beyond anything that words can say, I am just so completely grateful and beyond blessed to have you in my life. Friends, here is today's episode, and I really cannot wait for you to hear this one because I just want you to feel the vibration as we go along. We go so deep. Here's today's episode. Love you. Hello, beautiful souls. Welcome back to the Angels and Awakening podcast. I'm your host and author, Julie Jancius. And today we're here with the author of Original Love, Henry Shukman. Henry, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Julie. It's really fun to be with you.
Amazing. Thank you. We have been interviewing guests here on the Angels and Awakening podcast for over 6 years. So many people who listen to the show have been listening since the very beginning. And we do a lot of teaching here on the show. We've also done so many interviews where I don't want it to feel repetitive. And so I was praying on this interview and I kept hearing Spirit say, talk to you about your experiences, because all of our experiences are so different in life. And I've been getting this, Spirit's funny sometimes. When the angels come in, they can be humorous. And the jokes that we grew up with in the 80s, the 90s, I keep hearing this thing, and I'm going to tee this up for you. Online so much recently, I've seen a lot of Christian men actually kind of coming after me and attacking me on Instagram because I talk about angels, I talk about the intuition, I talk about how you get messages from the other side. And, they'll be like, why are you saying God, universe, source? It's just God, and Spirit has been showing me all day long in this comedic way. 3 people walk into heaven, the Christian, the spiritual person, and the Buddhist. And there's really, when you just look at their experiences of how they experienced the divine as human beings in this earthly realm, that's what connects us all. That's the fundamental truth of it all. And as we all stand before God, universe, source on the other side, I really see all of the other pieces fall away. And it's the experience, us being here in human bodies, experiencing the divine, that connects us.
That's lovely to hear. I totally agree with you. And I'm sorry for all those guys who think they know something they don't know,
Right.
who are so convinced by their doctrines that that they've got all the answers and everybody else is wrong. Yeah. So I feel sorry for them because, that's a sad place to be stuck. It really is. And I know a lot of people are, alas. And I'm so happy, that the fastest growing religious designation is spiritual but not religious. SBNR. It's the fastest growing demographic in the realm of spirituality, which is such good news because...
Such good news. I even heard a couple weeks ago that there's a couple of publishing houses that are building imprints. If people don't know what that means, it's like a subsidiary maybe like off of the publishing house, and they're building it out just for that category, spiritual but not religious.
Like 5 years ago in a big census done by Civic Science, which is very sort of reputable, reliable thing, it was already 75 million people in the US alone. And it's been growing since then. So I don't know what the numbers are now, but it's really big demographic. And I got to say, I like that message you've been receiving. Ask him about his experiences because that's just the critical matter. I mean, they're right on. Whatever those messengers are, they're right on because, I was brought up totally rationalist, totally, empirical, rational. I was brought up in Oxford University. Both my parents were professors. I went to I went to a very sort of traditional school. I was, I was quite a serious student. I worked hard. I got into Cambridge University when I was young, actually, to go there to do more studies of literature and language and stuff. But when I was 19, actually, I was between my school days in Oxford and going to Cambridge University. In between, I did a gap year. I went to work in Argentina. It's a bit of a story about that. And then I backpacked. And towards the end of my trip backpacking, and by the way, all that time I was trying to write my first book, which I did actually do. I wrote this book and it was published a few years later. But at the end of that trip, I'd written this book, and it was sort of a mind-blowing achievement to have written a book, and I was very happy with it. And in that state of kind of relief and sense of accomplishment and happiness, one afternoon, I was watching the sunset on a beach. I was all alone, totally alone. And suddenly I had an experience that completely changed my understanding of who I was, what it was to be alive, what it was to be conscious, what this world was, and my true relationship to it. And that's, this new book, Original Love, comes out of that experience and a lot of meditation afterwards. But that, in that experience, I suddenly discovered that I was absolutely not separate. I was part of the whole universe. There was no question about it. That's what I really was. And I felt when this happened, it sort of befell me. It happened to me. It wasn't like I made it happen. I couldn't possibly have made it happen.
Right.
I didn't even know it was a possibility. And I was, by the way, I was stone cold sober. I wasn't interested in drugs or anything like that. Just footnote.
Not on psychedelics. Got it.
Yes. No, not at all. And I wasn't interested in spirituality. But this suddenly, it was unmistakable. I am part of everything. I belong, not just as a being in this universe. I belong because I'm made of this universe. The universe has made me into this form, and it didn't make me separate from the universe. It was an incredible discovery, and I knew it was true. Yeah. I just knew it was true. And it kind of, when it sort of faded, what I was left with was this sense of just an unbelievable love. Like it's as if everything really was a kind of dream of love, a dream made by love. Some greater love was making this whole world and making this experience we call life and being a human being. And that was just critical to my whole path in life. It wasn't, then I went home and I had some really hard times. It was so hard to reintegrate and come back into my old life and go to college. It was really, really difficult. And I also had this very difficult skin condition that came back when I got home. But gradually, I found a path of healing. I found a path of meditation that really helped me. And gradually, I could actually revisit that incredible experience and go further, make more discoveries like that. So experiences have been like the bedrock of my life's journey. What was different with this thing on the beach, though, was that actually it was like, okay, if we're really going to go there, I'll tell you.
Love it.
Okay.
Yes.
It was really like I saw into what consciousness itself was. It was like I no longer was seeing things. Mm-hmm. Instead, I dropped into this. In Buddhism, they call it shunyata, which means emptiness, which doesn't sound very good, but actually it's marvelous. It means it's a level of experience where what in my case, this time, because it's these kinds of experiences, and it's only been a few in my life that were deep like this one. And they're all a little bit different, but they're all images or angles on the same reality, I think. But it was like there's sort of nothing there, but it was like this sort of fabric, but it had no substance to it. And that's what everything was made of, and I was made of. And it went on forever, but the furthest part of it was somehow immediately close. It was like there was no distance. It was all one reality. So even the furthest reaches of the cosmos were somehow they were right here. Yeah. And and that's what my very own consciousness and the consciousness of all things was present. All things were present, but they weren't substantial. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that makes any sense, but
it does.
It was so beautiful. It was indescribably beautiful. And when it sort of faded, and I kind of remembered, oh yeah, I'm a person standing on this beach. It sort of came back, Yeah. But then I was hit by this wave of love because it was as if
Did it make you cry?
I don't think it actually made me cry.
Was it the most powerful love that you've ever felt? And have you ever been able to feel that again?
Yes, I'm happy to say I have. Yeah. I have. Because what happened, like maybe 5 years after that, I got into regular daily meditation practice. Yeah. And it began I'd go after it. When I got home, I had a really hard time and I got very tight, very anxious, quite depressed. There's reasons for that, but I got into a really difficult place. And I was kind of doing my life, but really unhappily. Mm-hmm. Then I started meditating every day, twice a day, actually, every day. Yeah. And things started to soften, and I began to get more tender. And actually, after a few years, I had another experience, a bit like that, and and along the way, even before then, actually, I had periods of that presence, or moments of that sudden presence were starting to come again. And sometimes my heart would be overwhelmed with a sense of, I don't know why this is so beautiful. How come we're given this experience, And there'd be a great sense of tenderness and love there. And I believe that, and this is my book my new book is kind of about this, that people don't talk about this, but I think maybe the real point of meditation is reconnecting with that unconditional, boundless, immortal, love.
Yeah.
Just a love that doesn't do time.
Right.
Doesn't do time or distance. It's I feel it's sort of the fabric of everything.
Yeah. I feel that fabric that you're talking about when I get into meditation, and I do a oneness meditation where I feel it very much. So I don't believe all people are feelers, but I feel a lot when I'm in meditation, and I feel a lot out in my auric field, which I think is interesting because as scientists are looking for consciousness, what they found is that they can't find it all within the brain, because it's outside of us as well.
Yes.
And so when I get into this oneness meditation, I totally get what you mean, because it's as if you're one with all that is, and all that is one with you. And there really isn't as much feeling into the physical body as much as just, I love the word fabric. I never thought about it, but it's so true.
You're describing that beautifully. I know that very well, whether like the boundary between the imaginary boundary that I sort of think I know between me and everything else, me and the world, that just can sort of disappear.
Yes.
It can dissolve, it can get blurry, it can dissolve, and it can disappear.
Yeah. I want to talk about your experience of, you've had suicidal thoughts in the past. And did that come about after this experience or before? I've had suicidal thoughts my whole life, and I've talked to various different experts on this podcast about it. And somebody phrased it in a way that I'll never forget, where she said, once your mind has kind of opened up to this as an option, where your consciousness is just thinking about it, it's kind of an easier option for your brain to kind of fall back on or default to in hard times. And I don't think that everybody always understands this, because not everybody's had their brain go to that place where, it's just kind of like this endless well where you're just at the very bottom of this space. I wondered if you could talk about your experience with it, because not everybody has an easy awakening. Some are harder.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah, and look at, I was a case of somebody who had a spontaneous awakening.
Yeah.
And then after that was when I really got hit hard.
Yes.
With difficult stuff. A few weeks later, after that moment on the beach, I went home back to Oxford in England, and I was just overwhelmed by the unacknowledged sorrows of my childhood. All my childhood, it had been difficult. I'd had a skin condition from my early childhood that I was hospitalized for sometimes, from infancy.
Yes.
And then my parents divorced, and it was a really painful, messy, nasty situation with another, third party, and it was really difficult, and I felt very kind of, shameful and bad, but during my childhood, I'd really put up a wall against all my difficult feelings. Because I thought it would be overwhelming, and I had to function. I had to go to school and, do my homework and be with my friends, and in order to sort of maintain what I thought I had to maintain as a kind of normal life,
Yeah.
I had to just totally shut off all my feelings. And, and added to which, I didn't even know who I could talk to my feelings about. My parents were
Sure.
professors. They weren't warm, cozy. They were totally rational too. They weren't good with feelings.
Yeah. Yeah.
But when I got home after this opening up of this awakening experience when I was 19, I had all those walls I'd put up. They'd come down. I was wide open, and I walked back into my dad's house first, and within half an hour, I actually got into a bath after I'd got, he said, "Oh, go and have a bath, Henry, you've been traveling." I'd come a long way back, and I got in the bath, and as I heard, like, the voices of my dad and stepmom downstairs, and the pipes whistling, and sort of making their noises in the house, sounds that I knew incredibly well, from my childhood. Suddenly, it just reawakened all this trauma from my childhood that I had not let myself feel when I was a kid. And now I was wide open, and it was in a way, it was a beautiful thing that I was at last open. And that's actually, I really started crying then, sobbing and sobbing. But I thought it was a bad thing. I thought it was bad to be crying. I thought it was terrible to be feeling this way. I thought I had lost that beautiful thing I discovered on the beach. I had lost it. It had been taken away from me by coming home. And I went into despair, actually.
Yeah.
Even that I couldn't really acknowledge. I didn't want to be a person who was feeling this way. I wanted to be a strong, good, healthy person. And I had a lot of stigma around mental health, poor mental health. And actually, and I sort of, soldiered on or whatever. I managed to make myself get through college. It was 3 years. That's what it is in the UK usually. And I managed to start, my life and working, and I was miserable really inside all that time. I mean, I'd do things to feel a bit better. I'd had friends, and we drank too much, honestly, and I just tried to navigate not feeling awful. And when you're talking about like being at the bottom of the well, I had this image in my mind of like, sometimes I'm walking on what I think is the ground, and then all of a sudden there's a deep ravine, and somehow I've dropped to the bottom of the ravine, and that land where everybody else is living is way up there, and I don't know how to get back there, And so
it's so deep.
It's so deep. And that's when I had suicidal thoughts. It became, I don't think I ever, well, there was one time I actually made a plan. But you know what? My path was that I just was so lucky that two friends persuaded me to try meditation.
Wow.
And I did. There was this program, for a week, every evening you went to get trained in it, and it was a pretty popular style of meditation called transcendental meditation.
Yeah, I'm familiar. I've done it. Yeah.
You've done it, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they had a thing where if you were a graduate student, which I was, you get 90% off the price.
Oh, good. Yeah, yeah. I know they do the pricing by income, like where your income is at. Yes.
Right. So I went and did it, and I did the week course, and I was desperate, so I really did it.
Yeah.
I did it twice a day, 20 minutes, kind of for the next 5 years until I changed to another style of meditation. So I'm really grateful to them for drilling that in. It's every day. They sort of said, do it twice a day or don't bother.
Yes.
I think nowadays I don't feel, I think it's a little too harsh personally, but I did do it, and it just started, and then I started doing therapy. I feel I was very lucky, and I started to have resources for looking at all this stuff, and not being overwhelmed by it, and not having to deny it and pretend that I was invulnerable, I started to become able to be vulnerable.
Yeah. I wonder, what was the experience like of continuing to have your parents as a part of your life when they don't really understand this path or getting emotional help and mental health? Was it hard to relate to them? Did you have to create some boundaries, or did they become more accepting of it as they watched you experience it?
Back then, I kind of say they were useless. I couldn't talk to them about anything, and it wasn't just me.
Yeah.
If I did try to, and they just sort of couldn't go there. It wasn't. So, be that as it may, there was a point in my I think I was around 26, 27, by then maybe 28, when I somehow, and I was in therapy, and I somehow felt I've got to have a break from them. Mm-hmm. I've got to have a break from them. And for about a year, I basically didn't see them, and I imagine it must have been probably, I don't know, my dad was, busy with his new family. I don't know how much he minded, but I think my mum probably did, but then she was very busy as well, so she's probably okay. But for me, it was just to make that kind of, I know it's not the only way of doing it, but to make that stand for myself. It was like, it helped me reclaim myself, like I matter, and I matter to me, and my feelings matter, and I can't keep pretending they don't. Mm-hmm. And they don't acknowledge them, they don't know how to acknowledge them, they don't know what I'm talking about. That's okay as long as I do.
Right.
And so it really helped me to have a real hard boundary. Mm-hmm. And then, from a year of that, I didn't decide it would be a year, it just turned out to be about a year. Yeah, I could start seeing them more. And, but I was still on a therapeutic path, I was still in and out of different kinds of therapy that I'm really glad I've done. I've had great experiences with different kinds of therapy, by the way,
Yes.
And I value them all, and it's over time I totally got to a place where I could have good relationships with both my parents on my terms, and they've become really good friends, my dad died 12 years ago, but
Oh, I'm glad that you had that experience. I want to go back to something that you said at the beginning, because I think it's so important that when you were on the beach, you said you had this magnificent experience and you were able in meditations to go back to it. And there's something about being in that fabric where you're just one with all that is, where it feels like time operates differently. And that I've had that same thing happen where you just have these incredible moments, and later in life you're able to get into a meditative state and actually go back to that moment, open it up deeper, look at it from different angles, and actually even get more out of that moment in the future. So I was wondering if you could talk about that. And I guess my other question is, like, when the self dissolves and we become one with all that is, do you think that we actually perceive time differently? Or are we like stepping out of time?
That's just beautiful. I'll tell you, basically, I totally agree with what you're saying in your question. I say that really I'll tell you what I really believe now is, like, time is something we construct in our minds. It's not really real.
So we're stepping out of it.
Yeah, we're putting down the idea of it.
Wow.
And when we do, we find, because when we find that oneness that you called it, I totally agree, it doesn't have time in it.
It doesn't.
That's why some people call it the eternal now.
Yeah.
Because it's timeless.
Yeah.
they say in Zen, actually, which I've also done, a lot of, they say it's the beginningless beginning and the endless end. It has no beginning, it has no end. That's what this eternal now is.
Yes.
And I think when we have those moments of presence, like you were describing, I think it's a taste of that.
Yes.
Of that no time, just this endless moment that doesn't have time.
Yeah.
But hey, I wanted to just check in, Julie. Did we talk enough about suicidal thoughts? And is there more that we want to dig in there, or are you?
No, I think we're good. Yeah. No, I think it's thank you for sharing your experience. I think that a lot of times we hear in spiritual cultures, and I think that you've been a really great advocate away from this. A lot of times people talk about spiritual awakening and how blissful you feel and just how amazing you feel. And I think there was that book, After the Ecstasy, Do the Laundry, right? Like we have to actually come out of that blissful state. But I had the same thing happen that you did, just in a different way, where when I had a spontaneous awakening when my dad passed, about 6 months later, everything started to unravel. And what I realized in that moment is that I was often ignoring rephrase, like I grew up very, very religious, right? So I was used to always being in a state of prayer. I feel like my entire life, because I was raised by nuns going to Catholic school, just constantly talking to God, universe, source. And what I realized about 6 months after awakening is how much I was trying to control and not really wanting to hear answers to the prayers from God, but wanting to hear the answers that I wanted to hear. And that wasn't being part of the fabric. That was me wanting to control my life and be Julie, controlling the path forward. And I realized that I had to release and just allow myself to be open. And that felt so scary. It felt like I was walking on an invisible wire high up between two tall buildings, and it felt like I was going to fall off if I released control and just allowed God to direct my life. And as soon as I allowed that to happen, instead of feeling fear, I started to feel a little bit more peace, and then a little bit more peace. And then I started to recognize, when I do let the divine control the path forward, it often works out a hell of a lot better than when I try to control it myself. And that's when it became easier to kind of throw up the reins and go, okay, then direct the way.
The fact that you got it just 6 months later, that's really cool. That's how you're starting to let the reality you've experienced sort of seep into your life and guide your life more.
Yeah.
I love that. I feel much the same. That I had a long, hard path of therapy and of meditation, with 2 or 3 or 4 more real kind of significant, like awakening moments, and a lot of moments of deepening mindfulness and presence and things. And it was a great path with amazing teachers. But somehow I never thought that I was going to get over some kind of hump. I was always going to revert to some core anxiety and core, sometimes mildly depressed, and some core unease. I thought, because I'd been graced with these beautiful moments, and I've been very lucky because, I know not everybody gets these awakening moments, and I wish everybody did, but and I know everybody can, but you can't really make them happen. You can just make ourselves a bit more open to them, maybe. But I kept coming back to this, pretty uneasy person. I thought, that's just how I'm made. I'm not really going to make this big shift that like I could see my teachers have made, and a lot of people out there seem to have made,
Yes.
but not me. I never would. And then actually I did, and it wasn't like I expected, but really it was a complete surrender. It was, and that was for me, that was the key thing, surrendering.
Yeah.
And then this wave of, I suppose, a kind of trust.
Yeah.
Maybe faith, but not in. I'm not exactly religious like that.
Yeah.
But it is a kind of faith, but it's just not exactly in.
Yeah.
And it's more like God, universe, source. It's sort of, it's in reality. The reality, the greater reality. And letting things come.
Mm-hmm.
And I do what they tell me to do. The messages come, like you said. I totally get that.
Yeah.
And actually, one of my Zen masters, who's been still a teacher of mine in Japan, an amazing old guy, is a very successful businessman and a very deep Zen master. But he says, I get the email, is how he puts it.
Oh! I love that. Oh, it's so true. It's so true.
Isn't it? It's like that, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, and that trust, it doesn't feel comfortable at first. At least it didn't to me. Like it didn't feel easy. But then you realize that, when I'm trying to control, I can't get the text message from heaven. I can't get the email from God. I'm really blocking it by wanting what I want for myself. And if I step away from that, the other thing that I feel is like when you're one with all that is, I call it the realm of all possibilities, because oftentimes we just think of one or two options in front of us and don't see that there's a vast array of just infinite options available to us. But that's what I started to notice that God sees for us, is that when you're trying control and you're not trusting, you're just praying for one of two things and not seeing that there's a better way. There's a show called 1883 and 1923, and I'm not sure which one it's in, but in there, the narrator says, God never says no to us. God always says either yes, not yet, or I have something better in mind. And that really struck me, because that I have something better in mind is that realm of all possibilities. Henry, you might have the answer to this, and maybe you don't, but maybe you could point us in the right direction. As I was looking at your work, one of the questions that kind of came to mind is, as your parents are both professors, have you ever looked at or thought about when your brain awakens, what's actually happening inside the physical brain? Is it just a shift in brain chemistry? Is it something permanent that we're tapping into, like a vibration, and that once we tap into that vibration, it might be in the background, but it can never truly be away from us?
I think one thing about it is that there are these networks along the midline of the brain, kind of down the middle of the brain, that do a lot of narrative stories about me, for all of us. When we're self-referential thinking, those midline networks are firing. And when we discover, when we're resting in infinite oneness, they're silent. Those midline networks that are doing narratives about the self are silent.
Wow.
That's something I've heard. Then there's the whole thing I think about, like theta waves, I think.
Yeah. Beta, theta, yeah.
Exactly. Very peaceful waves, brain waves. The whole brain gets coordinated. Instead of lots of different jangly stuff going on, single pulse of the waves going, as if on a still day right across the ocean, a swell is traveling. I mean, I don't know if it's like this. I'm imagining.
Yes, yes.
Very peaceful brain, Then there's another thing I've heard, which is that somehow, it gets the connectivity within the brain gets much greater. Like all regions are connecting with each other. I've heard that. I
Ooh,
don't know.
Spirit does something for me. When I hear something that they want me to know more about, I see them circle it or highlight it. There's a lot there. It's all connected, which would make so much sense, because if we're feeling one with all that is it activating just all of the neural networks within us?
It might be. I'll tell you, there's some people, a ton of research has been done on mindfulness meditation, thousands and thousands of studies, and a few have been done on oneness meditations. And there's a few universities around the world that are interested in that now. But it's very difficult research to do, because you need enough meditators who kind of know how to get into that state in order to do some studies. And there's one study that did some research with a group of, I think they had like 34 or something meditators around the world who could do that kind of meditation. And they compared them with another group of meditators who were just doing mindfulness meditation. And the effects were just off the charts. How much more impactful it was, because they're getting they would be, they're getting a sense that they're connected with everything, and they'd be saying, "Oh my gosh, it's so beautiful," and everything's here somehow, and nothing's missing, and they give them like these questionnaires, to rate it on these different scores. That meditation, how impactful was it? And this level, and this way, and and they're all like very, very high scores. With the mindfulness stuff, it's just much more. I felt I could see that I was thinking more clearly. I recognized that the thoughts weren't me, that they were just floating through, and that was very nice. But it's nothing like the impact of.
That puts a lot together for me, because that's how I teach people, is the oneness meditation. And I wrote my first book on this, that it's really by getting into that state of oneness with all that is, connecting to this realm of all possibilities, that you can hear, you can see all possibilities, you can feel all possibilities. And that is a consciousness greater than us, or us being connected to something greater, that really is looking out for us, that knows where we can go in the future. And that's how I believe that we can hear from the other side.
Yes, I can totally relate to the way you're describing it and the experience you're describing. I probably, I'm not so, like I said, I don't know about, the religious world.
I'm spiritual, not religious these days. Yes.
Okay, cool. But I feel that there's just, this greater reality that we find in oneness. And by the way, there's also the term emptiness, which is almost the same thing. It sounds different, but it's actually really talking about the same experience, because it's empty of boundaries.
Have you ever watched The Good Place?
No.
Oh, you would love it. It's this show. You have to watch it from the very first episode to understand what's happening. But they show it kind of in a way that I see it when I'm doing my readings. So I believe that there's here in this physical realm, right? And if you talk to people who had near-death experiences, they see things on the other side. And I believe, Spirit always kind of jokes like, you humans think that this is the only physical reality. How could that be? If we have these people, scientists here, who can think of these great inventions, on Earth, we have so much more on the other side. But there's a third place that I would always tap into, and that is that place of just oneness with all that is. It's really beyond what people think of as heaven. And it is that place of emptiness. And when I would feel emptiness and tune into it, I would say to God, I never want to go to that place, because I never want to be away from my child and from my husband and my friends and my mom and my family. And I would hear back, oh, Julie, it's not a lack of anything. It's where you are all experiences all at once. You are always connected with everything all at once. It's something that I don't know that our brains can totally understand in our form right now.
Yeah. Emptiness is full of everything.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It really is. And it's just a bad word,
Yeah.
really. But it's kind of not totally bad, because it means, like it's empty of borders, empty of separation, empty of ideas.
Yeah.
And then there's this vast, infinite presence of all. It's so beautiful. I'm so happy to hear you talking about it. You know, It makes me feel good just hearing you talk about it, because I agree. And I think it's like, I also think it's never, how do I put this? It's never really absent. You know, we may not feel it at a certain time, of course, but actually it's never really absent.
100%. Because you can always put your attention, your awareness on it, and you're right back there. You're right back in that state of being.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the fact that you can do that means it's really open for you.
Yeah. Today it feels like a light switch. I'm 43. We have a large network of friends. And, if my husband and I are to go out, I kind of turn it off and I go be a human, and I just go enjoy being present with friends and my surroundings. And then if I wanted to feel it or activate it, just turn the light switch on and it's right there.
Now, I don't actually know, I wish I knew a bit more about what you do, but do you offer, do you do readings with people? Then you switch it on and you can help them in deeper ways than you could ever think your way through?
Yes. A woman that I was across from at work in the meeting, she's like, you have to figure this out. Like, you have to figure out how. And so I went and studied with just world-renowned mediums and learned how to make that connection. But it's really through oneness. The oneness is like tuning the radio dial to the right station where you can hear the voice of the broadcaster clearly.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's fantastic. Beautiful. Did you get, would you ever have sort of dialogues with someone, for example, with him? Yeah.
Oh yeah. Still to this day too. He comes through with the coolest things. I can sit down and just channel out what he wants me to say. And I also just let him surprise me with different signs. Every August 5th is the anniversary of the day that he passed. And actually just coming up August 5th in a couple of months here is going to be 10 years since he passed. And he always brings in a new movie every single time. I tell him, I don't want to remember. I don't want to know that it's coming up. Just remind me on the date. It's the day that you passed. And I always feel called to turn on a movie. One time it was Field of Dreams. One time, he had me turn on Arrival. But always just a movie that kind of brings you back to that connectedness of the intuition, which I believe is really them communicating with us.
Right. By the way, isn't Arrival a great movie?
Oh my God, it's the best. Because, I was thinking about it when you were talking about time and just how time doesn't exist over there. It doesn't here either. We just don't realize.
Well, hey, maybe this is interesting. I know, but in a lot of I did this whole period of training in Zen, where they work with what they call koans.
What's that?
A koan is a little phrase that doesn't seem to make sense. And it's like what is the sound of one hand? Or if you know the sound of two hands clapping, but what is the sound of one hand? That's one. Another one is like the whole earth is medicine. And there's lots and lots and lots of them.
Oh my gosh. Each one of those that you just said just brings a total peace, like this wave of peace.
Well, exactly, because they are speaking from the world of oneness. And I think that Arrival is the best
It is.
It's the best movie I've ever seen showing what koan training is like. The way the creatures, the heptapods,
Yes.
they spray the ink circles.
Yes. And then they can read it.
And then exactly. They can, that's their way of speaking or writing, and she starts to understand it, but she can't understand it without changing. Her whole mentality has to change. Her whole understanding of time and space has to change in order to understand what they're saying. That's like koans. Each koan is like one of those messages from outside of time and space.
I feel like I could just sit there and meditate on one a year.
That's what some people do. Some people just they take it into their sitting. Some people do, you can do a lot of them. I did a whole training where probably it was like usually about one a week with a teacher helping me, and on our app actually that we have some of them.
Tell everybody about your app. This is so cool. You have 75,000 people using this meditation app.
Well, we're really lucky. It's called The Way, and it's there's 3,000 meditation apps.
Yes.
And we decided to do one anyway. And we think ours does something that none of the others do, which is mostly they want to provide many, many options, more and more choice, like Netflix, like the more choice, the better, and because there'll be more for more people. And we decided to do exactly the opposite. No choice. You have a pathway, and and you can't jump ahead. You have to do each meditation before you can do the next one. And it's a 3-year pathway. And I mean, actually, talking about, how decisions and choices and possibilities come, it all came to me while meditating. And so did that book, Original Love. And actually, this meditation app is actually like leading somebody through the pathway that the book is about. But you're actually doing it. You're like day by day meditations. So we're just really, it's only been out just over a year, and we're just so happy that it's actually, people are finding it really, really helpful.
I'd love to try it.
Well, we'd love to get you a free subscription if you'd like. Well, we can figure that out after. Yeah.
I'd love that. Oh, thank you, Henry. Oh my goodness. You are just such an incredible soul. I'm just so blessed that we got to spend this time together. Your new book, your book came out last year, the hard copy, but the paperback is coming out July 9th, Original Love. Tell everybody where they can find that, the app, and you.
Okay. Well, the book is all reputable bookstores. The app is on the App Store and Google Play for Android, and I can be found at henryshukman.com.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, Henry, you're just such a beautiful soul. Thank you so much for spending your time with us today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's been absolutely beautiful experience for me. Thank you so much, Julie.
Good,
You're
too.
a very wonderful person as well. I'm very grateful for time with you.
Thank you.